really feel what's in there. I want you to see the background of the whole story. Otherwise, it's going to be like another story that we read or story that we saw in the movie. It will say, wow, nice. But after that, we go home and it didn't even touch us. So I want you to dig deeper to that. So I went deeper. So I just gonna have a brief recap. So it's about the story of Naomi and Elimelech and the family who were living at Bethlehem during that time, and a famine came. It could be the results of God's discipline. So instead of accepting the discipline, they decided to, hey, let's get out of here. We have money, we have something. Let's get out. You know, somehow let's get out under God's wings. And we know that the place that they went was Moab, a place that our God cursed. If we go to Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 3, you will see why. It is one of those times wherein the people of God, the Israelites, wanted to ask help from the Moabites. They were chasing a group of armies, and they're supposed to pass through Moab in order for them to win the battle, but then the Moab closed their doors. So they didn't win that battle, so God was mad at them. So they cursed the land. So we can see that it's just a regular decision that they made one day, but then it has a really huge implication about their faith. It talks about their disobedience. They try to rationalize it because, hey, this is for our family's welfare, but they know in their hearts that it's wrong. But isn't it like us? When we want something, even though we know it's against God's will, just push for it, and then we'll try to rationalize it with good intentions, right? Okay, so what happened? God punished them. Elimelech died. Her two other sons died. Malion and Kilion died, leaving her two daughters-in-law, Orpha and Ruth. So she decided, yeah, I was wrong. God's hand is heavy on me. So she decided to go back to Bethlehem. On the way, she realized that reality sets in, and she realized that all she has is two daughters-in-law, and there are Moabites. And what will the people say if I have two Moabite women here? I don't know if that's the whole story, but for me, if I put myself in the shoes of Naomi, that will be what I'm thinking. These two are the results of my disobedience, because I look for a wife for my son, and they shouldn't marry a Moabite. So it's like a story of us wherein if we made mistakes, we try to hide that. We don't want people to see our mistakes. And that's pretty much Naomi did. That's why that causes her to stop those two daughters-in-law and tell them, you go back to your own home. Find a new husband. I'm too old. If I get a husband and I get pregnant, do you think I'm going to get pregnant? If I get pregnant, do you think you're going to wait for my sons to grow and then get married to them? That's impossible. Go home. But the thing is, these two daughters saw something about Naomi. They saw something that Naomi's God is real. For Orpha, she knows that. Because when the first offer was given to her, she refused it. She wants to go with Naomi. But then, for her, reality sets in again. What if I couldn't find a husband? This place is a foreign to me. What's in store for me? What's my future like? And then she made a decision to go back to Moab, to follow her families and her God, Chemosh. So, for Ruth, although she didn't, all she heard to Naomi was about Yahweh, and she knows about Yahweh, but she didn't even see Yahweh perform yet. Besides, what she saw was the opposite. Naomi was talking about God. Yahweh is a God of blessing, God who favors. But what happened to Naomi? But even so, Ruth decided to follow her because she looks past beyond Naomi. She looks at her God. So, that's the recap. I want to introduce to you a word today. The word is sensus plenur. It's a Latin word which means a fuller sense or a fuller meaning. This is a biblical text of which the author unnecessarily intended what was originally written. So the author just wrote about the story, and she didn't have any intention that, hey, in the future people will read it. I just write the story based on what I know. But with God, He intended it for more. He intended it for deeper meaning. That's why we're studying the book of Ruth, because that story for the author is just a story. But now that we're talking about it, it is a sensus plenur. It's very important for us to see this, because if we miss this, we miss the whole point of the story of book of Ruth, about God's provision. And if you miss that, you're also going to miss the whole story, the point of the story of our life. How God woven together each situations in our life, that instead of complaining about it, we look back at it and looking back at our life before and say, God, thank you. Thank you that you allow me to go through this. And now I see your hands moving. Sensus plenur. Chapter 2, verse 1, please. So I'm going to read it to you. Before that, I want to read to you a poem. It says like this. I was walking on the road one day when I stepped on a paired wings. I picked it up and began to swing. And suddenly, in the sky, I was there, flying like an eagle, soaring up so high. People began to worship me and made me one of their gods. One day, the pair of wings was nowhere to see. Now I stopped and began to ponder. Would the people love me still? 3 more correct answers would have changed my situation, going to the top 10 when I took my nursing board. Of all the 25,000 people, nurses who took it, I was just there. For a small college, it's a huge accomplishment. For a small town, that's huge. It's one of those firsts. My high school alma mater, when I go home, it was on the highway, I saw a big banner there with my name in it. I thought that I just picked wings, start swinging it, and suddenly I was there up in the sky. Do you have that situation in your life wherein you feel like you're indestructible? All of a sudden you see yourself up there. The book of Ruth has certain seasons of life. Sometimes I saw myself as Naomi. Sometimes I saw myself as Ruth. Sometimes I saw myself as Boaz. During this time when I'm reading it, it's about the sensus plenur. I see myself being Naomi. When reality sets in, months of waiting, looking for a job, competing against fellow graduates during that year, also the year before that, who has been volunteering just to get an experience, put like 1 or 2 lines on their resume, and these are the people you're going to compete with. Thousands of you for a single position. So I have to live with my aunt. And you know, when you live with your aunt and you don't have money to provide for them, you know what it means. I don't know if you've experienced that. I have to take care of a little money that my mom gave me just enough for me to go in and out to find a job. And then eventually I decided I want to go home. I'm done. My wings are gone. For Ruth and Naomi, chapter 2, verse 1 says, Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech, a man of standing whose name was Boaz. And Ruth, the Moabitess, said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. He said, "The Lord be with you." And then the harvester answered, "The Lord bless you," as they called back. You can see what kind they were introducing. Before I introduced the three widows. Now I'm introducing you another person, which is Boaz. They introduced Boaz as a man of God by simply he's the owner of the field, and then what he did first, he shouted to the people, "The Lord be with you," and then the people answered back. So you can see the kind of manager he is. He's a godly man. He's being respected by his people. So that's Boaz. So in verse 5, Boaz noticed someone on the field. And he asked the foreman, and he said, "Whose young woman is that?" That's in verse 5. Verse 6, it said, the foreman replied, "She is a Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.' So she went into the field and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter." I want to introduce to you Ruth. So you heard about Ruth. In chapter 1, you heard about Ruth being a loyal, a courageous woman, a woman who decided and chose the right decision by following God, living with her family and her God, Chemosh. She's a special woman. But now we're going to go deeper to who really Ruth is. In let's keep an eye on verse 2. It says there, Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone whose eyes I find favor." And then we'll go back to that. Let's jump to verse 3. It says, "So when she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters, as it turned out, for your Bible, sir, does it says it so happened? Or, yeah. Is there any translation there, it so happened? Or maybe in our own layman term, luckily, right? As it happened, right? Something like that. So we want to focus in this word, as it turned out, or as it happened. And I'm going to introduce to you another word, providence. What is providence? Providence is a God's sovereign guidance and control. I want to give you another verse for that in Romans 8, verse 28. "For we know that all things work together for good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose." You know that God works everything together for those who love him. And that's providence. You see here in verse 3, it says, it just happens. Accidentally. Wink, wink. According to the author, right? But is it really just what happened? You see, when Ruth left that day, she went to the field. It's a vast, large area. In those fields, there's no name in it. And during the time, she didn't even know who Boaz is. So she just went for a place and starts gleaning. It just happened to be a field of Boaz. Now we can see the hand of God starts to move here. Okay, that's why I say I'm going to go back to verse 2. Oh, you know what? I'm going to ask you one more question before I go to verse 2. Do you believe that God knows your situation? Each one of us, do you believe that? Okay, good, good. Another question. Follow up. Do you believe that He cares for you? I want to hear it louder. Okay, now I'm convinced. Do you know that? Do you believe that God is good? Amen. Now, do you believe that His plan is complicated? Okay, good. It's not a gotcha question. So, do you believe that His plan is complicated? And are you glad that you're not in charge? Yeah, right? But, somehow, in some ways, we want to be in charge. But if we know that our life is so complicated, we meet a lot of people, you go, for some reason, you went to a certain place, God put you in a certain place. What shall I do here? Like me, I've been to a lot of places. But for some reason, God woven together everything, and here I am. It is all because God is in control. Okay. You see, if you believe this, we will begin to see the whole story unfolds, that God is in control. For Ruth that morning, Ruth didn't wake up like the Disney movies that we see. She woke up one morning. There's two bluebirds singing in the window. Tweet, 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 so cute. And then she woke, good day. It's not the situation here. This story is a true story. It's not a Disney movie. So she woke up that day. She wasn't woke up by the aroma of Starbucks coffee, sweet smelling aroma. And for Pete's coffee's sake, she didn't even have a breakfast that morning. Oh well. Compared to Naomi chose to stay at home. But for Ruth, she rolls her sleeves and she said, I want to go out. I'm going to look for God's favor. I want to look for God's favor. You see, we have to recognize that Naomi during this time is mourning for the death of the two sons and the husband. And I want to heal my spirit. I want to just stay here, right? But you also have to understand that Ruth was also widowed that day. Ruth needs a support from the family, but then the family was there back in Moab. And what she had is a bitter mother-in-law. And I don't know if you want to live with that kind of woman, but that's what she has. And the thing is, if she hesitates at all and follow what Naomi is doing, do you know that barley harvest is too short? If she won't do something right now, she'll see herself and Naomi gonna starve to death in a few days. You see, when they went home, Naomi still have a house. Naomi still has a piece of land, but that land doesn't have anything in it. I remember they left for almost 10 years. So how do you imagine the house has been left behind after 10 years? And this house is not even air-conditioned house. It's made of clay. So when they went in there, there's nothing. There's no food. Windows are broken. At night, it gets cold. So this is the situation they're in. Hopeless. But for Ruth, she didn't look at situation as hopeless. She woke up that morning, rolled up her sleeves. So, same situation, same emotion, different response. I want to introduce to you the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 9. Can you put it on that? And Deuteronomy 24, 19, 22. There is what we call the law of gleaning. Maybe Ruth was talking to Naomi on their way back to Bethlehem, and maybe, hey, mother, how do you get your food? Maybe Naomi talked to her about, hey, this certain thing called gleaning, wherein after they harvest and all this stuff. So Ruth tried to study that. So I'm going to read to you the Leviticus 19:9. When you reap the harvest of your land, You are not to reap the very edge of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You must not strip your vineyard bare or gather its fallen grapes. Leave them to the poor and the foreign residents. I am the Lord your God. And if we jump to the Deuteronomy 24. When you reap the harvest in your field and you forget a sheaf in the field, do not go back to get it. It is... some more. Roll some more. I'll see if I can read it here. Sorry. Okay. 24:19. Okay. When you harvest in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it to the alien, the fatherless, the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the works of your hand. When you beat the olives from your trees, do not go over the branches a second time. Leave what remains for the alien, the fatherless, and the widow. When you harvest the grapes in your vineyard, do not go over the vines again. Leave what remains for the alien, the fatherless, and the widow. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. That is why I command you to do this. When God written this command to the people of, for the Israelites, they were still in the desert. But then, the promised land is just there, but then God has already told them about this law. Someday you're going to be prosperous. Someday you're going to have abundance because I promise you this land. But this, remember the fatherless. Remember the widows. Remember the sojourners. Remember the strangers. They will come to your place. Leave something for them. That's the heart of God. Sometimes God provides us with everything we need, and then we tend to forget who are our neighbors. Last week we talked about who are our neighbors. And then we tend to forget because we tend to become busy about ourselves. So God already told them, hey, so I promise you a land. I promise you to be a land of abundance, a land of milk and honey. But make sure you don't forget the strangers. Don't forget. So that's the law of gleaning. So what happened is the normal thing is once they do the harvest, the men will cut the grain. And then the workers, normally the women will go there, collect all the stalks, and then make a sheaf. They collect it and then they tie it down and make a sheaf. And then they gather all together and bring it to the threshing floor. That's the whole process. And then, of course, from the stalk, there's a grain. Sometimes when they pull it out, some of the grains drops in the ground. The law of gleaning is you cannot take that grain that drops in the ground. All you have is what's in the sheaf. I'm so foreign with the words as well. On the sheaf. And that after that, leave those people, those strangers, the foreigners, the widows, to pick up those grains. That's good enough for their dinner. That's good enough for the day. For Ruth, the normal thing is, the process for that is about morning until 11 a.m. Because after that, it gets so hot. So the workers will stop, and then here comes the gleaners. They come in and start picking up. It's going to be hot during that time. For Ruth, she woke up like 7 in the morning. I want to find God's favor. So she went to the field, and she's so smart. She studied about the law, and then she starts negotiating for her rights. She starts talking to the foreman. Hey, you know what? I don't know, it's the whole conversation, but I'm just, the way I read about it, they said, hey, I know you wanted the gleaners to come by after you're done with everything, but don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to bother those female workers. Just let me go back, like about a feet or two back, and then I'm just going to start picking up some grain. I promise, I'm not going to bother you. That's what she asks. That's why she went there, negotiates with the foreman. And then notice that when Boaz says, in verse 6, the foreman replied, she is a Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, please let me glean and gather from among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went into the field and has worked steadily from morning till now. except for a short rest in the shelter. You see the kind of woman Ruth is. She went there, she negotiated. She even asked, can you bend the rules a little bit for me? I'm not begging. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for favor. You see, when you go to God, you never ask for pity. Lord, please, please. No, just ask God for favor. He's a great and loving God. He never wants people to ask to beg for him. He said, like, he was even, Jesus even told the story about that. When, who among you who was a father, even how bad his father is, the son ask for a bread and he'll give him what? A rock. How much more me? So he said, don't beg for me. I just ask for favor. This is what Ruth did. She asked for favor. And when the foreman saw this, she couldn't even stop her. Did you see the way she negotiated? The way she did, how hardworking she is? And the foreman saw it. I don't have the guts to stop her from there. I should have told her to stop doing what she's doing, but the way she's so honorable. She just did things in the right way. She probably bent a little bit rules, but you see, Boaz, I wanted to stop her. Boss, I wanted to stop her, but you do it. I couldn't. She's such a hardworking woman. So you see here, the reputation of Ruth. And if you notice, every time you reread it, you always hear the word Moabites. It was, she was described Moabites or Moabites from Moab about 16 times. It's just to emphasize that she's an outsider. Being an outsider, you're prone to abuses. People gossips about you. And it's in the group of women, for sure, you know what's going on. She's an outcast. Women talks about her. She was, emotionally, physically, she can be abused. That's why when later on as we read, we know that Boaz says, hey, don't go to somewhere else. Just stay in my field. Because that's the thing. She might get abused. But with God's provision, we'll see what's going to happen. So even Boaz didn't stop her. When the foreman told her she works day from morning till now, never even stops. She only stops to rest a little bit and go back again. So see, for Ruth, if she waits until 11 a.m., it's going to be too late for her. She might get few drops of grains, but that won't be enough for her and Naomi when she goes home. She's thinking about Naomi. So sometimes, for her, I need to push for my luck because there's someone there waiting for me. She has this heart of purpose, not only for herself, but for others. It's always a good principles that when you are mourning, when you are in trouble, when you feel heavy, the best way to do is to think about others too. Because if you focus on yourself, you're going to live in self-pity. But if you start widening your area, widening your field, and look for someone else to help, then God will open it up to you. That's what happened to Naomi. She just went home, stayed in her cave, and self-pity. But Ruth was not that. I ran out of superlatives for Ruth, but she's a strong-willed woman, a purposeful woman. It reminds me of the verse in Proverbs 31, verse 13-21. Can we just go there? It's all about the, what? Women. This year always been your topic. Women with what? Okay. It says that she selects wool and flax and works with willing hand. She is like the merchant ship, bringing her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and portions for her servants. She evaluates the fields and buys it. She plants a vineyard with her earnings. She draws on her strength and reveals that her arms are strong. She sees that her prophets are good and her lamp never goes out at night. She extends her hand to the spinning staff and her hands holds the spindle. Her hands reach out to the poor and she extends her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of her household when it snows, for all in her household are doubly clothed. A sign of a virtuous woman. Ruth is a virtuous woman. So during that day, Ruth looked for a favor. What is a favor? It means being favorite, right? God's favorite. He asked for that, but she holds herself in an honorable way. During the time, she's looking for a lunch. So for the whole day of work, she looks haggard. Maybe she's full of sweat and whatever you have in the faces or whatever. Whatever I'm saying is she doesn't look good during that day when Boaz came. Singles or youth, it's a point for you. You know, outer beauty is a big plus and a reward, so you always like to have to see someone's beautiful, right? But if someone's gonna love you because of that, if they couldn't recognize the inner beauty within you, think again. I know a few years from now, you're gonna be on that situation where you're gonna decide of who you wanna be married to. For women, most of you will be the one who will select if you're going to say yes or no. But for men, you're the one who keep an eye on someone. It works both ways. Yeah, like what I said, beauty, it's good. It's a plus factor. It's a reward for you. But look for something inner beauty. So even up to this time, figure out among yourselves, what is my idea of a noble woman? What is my idea of a noble man? And then ponder about this. And then once you see that person and you look at your list, you'll know that it is it. And then you start praying about it. You see, Boaz saw Ruth not on her outer beauty, but she saw Ruth of her inner virtue. So when she heard about all this, it starts the conversation on verse 8. Says, so Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Watch the field where the men are harvesting, and follow along other girls. I have told men not to touch you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and drink from the water jars the men have filled. When she saw it, when she heard about her story, all of a sudden she looked at Ruth. This woman is an extraordinary woman. I have to admit, when I was single, I always wanted to have a light-skinned colored woman. You know, I'm dark. So I was like, no way, I don't want a dark woman, you know. I don't want my kids to be darker than me. You know, back in Philippines, there's always that people wanted to be light-colored. If you see someone running on the street, it's not because they're afraid of the fast cars. Do you know why they're running on the street? They're afraid of what? Sun. And that's part of me. I wanted someone with a light-colored woman. So when my friend Joel, he introduced me to my wife, I didn't really look at her. I talked to her. It's like a friendly conversation. I'm a very friendly guy, you know. So we talk like hours, and then just for friendship. And after that, we forget. And then two years after, we worked together at we work as a paramedic, and then I have a chance to know her more. And I have a chance to see her inner beauty, her inner virtue. And I said, man, For 2 years, I wasted those 2 years just because I'm looking for a outer beauty and forgot that God has already provided one for me. I was like, there were nights when I couldn't sleep. You know, there are times that you just couldn't sleep. And then I look at my wife and said, Lord, why you give me for such a beautiful woman in my side? I was like, you see, when your person is in love, you know, you will see the glow coming out from someone, right? There's some, I just know when a certain girl, she just that, you know, she's not in love. She's just, okay. But all of a sudden, you'll see some glow in there. And what's our reaction? Ooh, you're in love, right? Because once you're in love, there's some certain kind of glow coming out from there, right? So if you're really looking for beauty, it will just flow. Once you see that virtue, you see the inner beauty of that person and you fall in love from that virtue, you will see the outer beauty will just come out. It will just glow in them. It's not in the Bible, it's just my opinion, but I think it works. Well, and then going back to the story, my question to you now is, did you wake up this morning? Or maybe tomorrow? If you're going to wake up tomorrow, did you ever ask God, or will you ever ask God to give you a favor? For those of you looking for a job, Lord, give me a favor. To those who have a job, then, Lord, give me a favor. Did you ask that? The heart of Ruth is totally different from Naomi. Totally different. For Naomi, it's poor me, poor me. But for Ruth, it's not about positive thinking theory. We heard about the positive thinking. But for Ruth, it is a truth-based theology that comes from our God, our Jehovah Jireh, which is my God who provides, a God who is our provider. That's for him, for her. She doesn't know much about Jehovah, but she knows that God will provide. And that's good enough. That's good enough. So in verse 8, you see that when she asked for favor, we see in verse 8, Boaz provided her what? What did Boaz provide for her? A provision. He provided her with place. Here, stay here. Even tomorrow you can come back here. You know that you have a place now. That's the provision. And if you read the book of Ruth, you would know that Boaz, at this moment, is a representation of Jesus Christ, and Ruth is the representation of us. Jesus is our Redeemer, and this time it was Boaz who's gonna redeem Ruth. So, if you ask for favor, God will provide you with what you need. And verse 9, it says here, you have to notice that Boaz says, hey, the men even fetch some water for you and then drink there. What do you notice there? During the time, even in the time of Jesus, who fetched the water? The women. You see that Boaz is way ahead of his time in this history. He asked this man to carry the water for these women. And then she asked Ruth to drink with that water. What does it mean to you? Boaz provided Ruth with this place of safety. You see, when we ask God for favor, it's not just provision. He will also give you protection. In verse 10, it says, at this time, she bowed with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, why have you found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner? She still remembered that she's a foreigner. Although she asked for provision, she knows. What is her reaction? When she received the provision, she received the safety, she received the protection, what's her reaction? She humbles herself. She lowered her face to the ground. I don't know if she's touching the feet of Boaz or what, but she just lowered herself to the ground and says, why you give me such a favor? You see, when we ask God for something and God give it to you, what's going to be our response? Thanksgiving. At the same time, we humble ourselves before Him. Understanding that what I receive now is all because of God's grace and God's mercy. Sometimes we forget. We ask God for something, and after we receive it, what? We celebrate. And forget that God is the one who provided that for you. Try to humble yourself. In verse 11, Boaz replied, I've been told about what you have done to your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with your people you did not know. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. May I continue to find favor in your... Okay, I'll stop with verse 12. I want to... Because my real verse is about chapter 2, verse 12. That's why my title is Under His Wings. I want to go back there. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. My story earlier is about... That's why I put that poem to you again, because I remember I tried to use my own wings. But with Ruth, she came to God for protection under His wings. You see, we tried so hard. Sometimes we tried to do it on our own. It's a human nature, I think. We try to do things on our own and forget about God. But all you're going to do is just go to God. That's why I said that the provision of God is so complicated. He don't intend for you to carry that burden. When He said, come to me who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That burden is supposed to be given to God. If you are like Ruth, you go to God's protection. If you seek for God's provision, you seek for God's wings, He will carry that for you. But then sometimes we try to do it our own. And God didn't intend that for you to carry that burden. Just give it all to Him. He said, my burden is light because I'm the one carrying it for you. And then verse 14, it says, mealtime, Boaz said to her, come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar. Then she sat down with the harvesters. He offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. You see in verse 14, we talked about the bread and wine. What does it say to you? It's about Jesus, huh? I am the bread. I am the wine. It talks about when you ask for God's favor, He's going to bring you to His family. You eat with them. So Boaz did that to Ruth. Come, eat. This table is supposed to be just for the workers. And I've been telling you, Ruth was an outsider. Because of God's favor, she managed to eat with them at the table. You know, the favor of God happens. And this favor sometimes, it's more than what you have thought or you imagine is going to happen. Sometimes it takes a while, takes so long, and we get so impatient. It's so hard to wait. But then if you have the heart to wait, if you have that faith to believe, then I'm going to tell you, it's going to be more than what you ever think or imagine. When God favored you, you are God's favorite. Remember that. Remember that. Like what I said, we're going to go through a lot of seasons in our life. But always remember, I am God's favorite. If I just go to God, He will not outcast me. That's why the invitation is come to me. When Ruth went to Boaz, Boaz provided her with everything. Verse 17, it says there, after she finished eating, she went back again to work and she went home carrying like 22 liters of barley. The 22 liters of barley is like good enough to make a loaf of bread. For Ruth, it was just a grain. But when Naomi saw her approaching with all those grains in her arms, Again, I remind you again of the word that I told you earlier. Can you remember that? Sensus. Sensus what? I didn't even remember. Sensus plenoir. What is that? Sensus plenoir. Plenoir. Sensus plenoir. For Ruth, it's just an ordinary day. She has the grain. Someone favored her. She has a work. But for Naomi, it's more than that. For Naomi, it's not just about the author's story anymore. For her, it is a grain that God provided for her. For Naomi, she was at her lowest point of her life. She was at the point that although she believes in God, but she believes that God doesn't take care of her. She even said that God's hands is against her. She still believes in God. But because of this action of Ruth, when Naomi saw it, once again, her spirit got lifted. Her spirit got lifted. Why? Because once again, she saw that the hand of God is moving. Once again, for her, it's enough to pronounce blessing for someone by saying, bless Boaz. All of a sudden, her mind starts to lighten up. All of a sudden, she has this sense of purpose. Oh, wow. Boaz is our kinsman redeemer. She is a relative of Elimelech. Once again, for Ruth, it's just an ordinary day, but it touches the core of someone. Enough for Naomi to believe that surely God has not forgotten her. God's solution is different from her solutions. For her, it's just she needs a man to redeem her. But God provided a woman. God provided Ruth. You see, sometimes we ask God and we already have the solution for our problem. Lord, if I only have money. Lord, if only I have a job. But then we tend to forget that God's answer is there. We just have to open our eyes. She forgets that when she went back to Bethlehem, people greeted her and said, Naomi, what happened? Don't call me Naomi, call me bitter. I came out full, but I came back empty. When she said empty, Ruth was beside her. She didn't even recognize that Ruth was beside her when she said, I came back empty. She totally missed the provision of God. You know, if we go to chapter 4, I'm going to end this. Chapter 4, verse 14 to 15. It so happened, I don't have time to tell the whole story. Boaz and Ruth got married, and Ruth had a baby. So, this is the picture of Naomi with a smile on her face holding her grandson. And then the woman told her. The woman said to Naomi, Praise be to the Lord who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better than the 7 sons has given him birth. You see, he's looking for one man to redeem her. But all the while, Jesus is providing a Ruth more than a 7 son for her. Now it's time for us to understand, what is God's provision for me? Am I missing it? Am I complaining a lot and then I tend to forget that God has already provided me with something? Which season of life are you? Are you Naomi right now? Wherein you know God is there, but then for some reason you think that God never listens anymore. Are you in that time wherein you just want to give up on God? Or are you in the season of Ruth? You're hurting, but then all of a sudden you hear that there's someone there, a God. I haven't proven it, but there was God in there who loves me. The God wherein I can call and ask for favor. Are you that person right now? Or maybe you are Boaz. Are you Boaz? Are you in a position to help someone? Are you in the position to reach out for someone? Provide someone with safety, a widow who doesn't have anything. Just provide them with comfort, provide them with acknowledgement, recognition. Maybe a helping hand. Are you in that season? Are you closing your eyes when God provided that gleaning law wherein don't forget about the fatherless, the widows, the strangers. I have provided everything for you. Don't forget about them. Don't close your door upon them. Where are you? Where are you in that situation? I'm just going to ask a little bit music, and then let's start to ponder about this. Where am I? Where am I in God's provision? Every one of us has been going through a lot. I don't know, a time of plenty. But then during this time of plenty, we forget. We forget to see our neighbors. We thought that because we're in the time wherein we are in plenty, we can pick up a wings and start swinging it and get all the recognition. Or maybe we are Naomi. That at this very moment of time, you already lose your hope. But one thing I'm sure after we read this message, that this message intended by the author just for a simple story, but for some reason the Holy Spirit intended it for you to hear this message. Because the God that they have during that time is the same God that we have today. He never changed. He never changed. He's still our Jehovah Jireh, our God, our provider. Or if you're Ruth, you hear the message, what's going to be your response? You hear that there was God in there. Are you going to be like Ruth? If you in your lifetime, probably some of you here just, you just go along with the group. Hey, it's a good group in here, but then the secret of your life, you really didn't have this chance to meet God. You didn't really have this encounter with God, and you go there with Him and talk to Him and ask Him to accept you. Remember, Ruth was a Moabite. And I told you the picture there in Deuteronomy 23 that God cursed her family. But when she went to God, God accepted her. It's a story of us. We are outcasts. We are not God's people. But when Jesus went to this world, she removed that barrier. Everyone is free to go to God right now. He is our kinsman redeemer. Redeemer is a word for if you have a debt or something like that. A redeemer will come to you. A close relative will come to you, and then remove all those debt, pay for everything that you owe, and then bring it back, give it back to you. That's redeemer. And Jesus did that. Jesus is God, but He cannot redeem us because we're men. So that's the simple gospel message here in Ruth is He became man. And then He offered Himself for you. He is our kinsman redeemer. So if any one of you here was in that period, or whatever season you are, I want to ask you to stand. And like what I said, God is our good Father who hears you. I'm not forcing you to stand, but if you feel like standing, and go to God in prayer, and just offer it up to God. Last week we talked that God is not just a God, but He's a loving Father. He wants to hear that pain. He wants to hear all those anxieties. And He wants you to just open it up to Him. And like what I said, God has a broad shoulder. He can take it. He loves you this much that even up to now, He's still giving you this message of hope. If you are that person, If you don't want to stand, that's fine with me. But then pray that prayer. Lord, for some reason I start doubting you. For some reason I start to lose my faith in you. Lord, be my Redeemer once again. Bring back the desire. Bring back the zeal. Bring back the joy that was gone for a long time. You know, when I went home, I told my mom, I'm done. I did my best. I waited for so many months. I still doesn't have a job. So she gave me 1,000 pesos. That's about $20 here. Said, go back. Let's see, we might get something. So when I went back to Manila, I still have that, with me on my wallet, I still have all those memory verses that I have. I claim for all those favor. I claim for those God's promises. But then 2 months after, money's gone. I still doesn't have a job. So I went to my friend, and then I told him, hey, let's go. This is my last chance. I'm going to go to that place. If that company is still not going to hire me, I'm going to go home. On my way there, I lost my wallet. So probably in my wallet, I have like 20 pesos or something. That's my last money. I lost it. So it will be maybe probably another 5 miles to walk to get to my friend's house. So I just walked. And on my way there, I was like full of sweat. And then, Lord, why? Why, Lord? That day, I lost my hope. I lost my faith. All I have is a question. But then when I went to his house, I said, I don't have anything. I have nothing. So he went to the room and took 500 pesos and gave it to me. I didn't even ask. He gave it to me. I said, hey, stay for a little while. Maybe another week. Find a job. For me, 500 pesos is just like $10. But for him, it's just a simple $500. But for me, it's more than that. It is God's provision. Following day, I got a job offer. And that $500 changed my life. And I'm here. I told him about the story. He doesn't want to. No, Nate, it's not my 500 pesos. It's not that. I know. It's God's hand. It's God's hand. So let's stand. All of us has a different story. I know you have stories of redemption. I know you have stories of defeat. I know that you have stories of frustrations. But God is never finished with you yet. God's plans for you is good because He is a good God. Our life right now might be complicated, but He will find a way to make things right. At the end, as we look back, the beauty, the tapestry of His creation, of His provision, will only remind us of how good He is. We will look back and then realize that God, thank you. Thank you that you let me go through all this process. You let me go through all this pain so that I would be humbled. That I will not rely on my own wings. That I will not rely on my own strength. That all I have is yours. All I have within me is all because of your grace and all of it is because of your mercy. God, thank you once again for reminding me that you are a good God. You are a good Father. Maybe right now we're hurting, but we know now, Lord, that you're always in charge of everything. You are our provider. You are a God who provides us with divine provision. By this, O Lord, we just want to give all the glory to you. We just want to give all the honor to you. For all of this is due for you, Father. All of these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.